Welcome back. You're listening to The Way Home with Laura Smith. Here's Laura.
This is one of those weekends that makes you stop and think about all you have to be grateful for, especially as an American. Memorial Day weekend, basically, the whole weekend, I feel, should be devoted to thinking of our beloved vets and anyone who has done any type of service to this country. And then, of course, remembering those who died and did not come home and gave the last ultimate sacrifice for our country. I'm so grateful. And our show today is going to have a wonderful guest who has written a book that commemorates Memorial Day. That's all coming up in the second half. Doyle Glass. In addition to being Memorial Day weekend, it also sort of signifies that what they call the unofficial start of summer. Also, just in time for creating the outdoor space of your dreams is the founder and president of Deck Remodelers, Sean Mcaleer, with his brand new book, Deck Rebellion, Revolutionary Concepts for Outdoor Living. You're going to love that, hearing all about the latest and greatest in outdoor decks. But right after, we're going to have a gentleman by the name of Doyle Glass. He has written, actually, he has an updated version of his book called Swift Sword, which is the true story of the Marines of Mike 3-5 in Vietnam for September 1967. Now, Swift Sword, included in its latest edition, are 50 interviews with soldiers of Vietnam, veterans who came back and lived to tell some of the most horrific stories, but also stories of great valor. And for that, I think it's an absolute perfect summer read for us to truly think about those veterans of the Vietnam War, all veterans, of course, and all people that perished in the war. So Swift Sword, Doyle Glass coming up, and of course, good news at the end with Jim Cleefield. I'm Laura Smith. Don't go away. It's Memorial Day weekend on the way home.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Way Home with Laura Smith. Here's Laura.
Well, finally, both on the East Coast and in the Midwest, it's a combination of spring and summer and a little bit leftover of winter, like all thrown into any given week at this point. But it just makes me so happy that I can open up my sliding glass door and I can walk out onto my deck. I think actually not as happy as it makes my cats, because that's where they like to live as soon as it gets nice out. And who doesn't love a good deck? And I'll tell you what, whether it's Greenwich, Connecticut or Northern Indiana, people are obsessed with their decks. But there's an art to all of it. Obviously, there's engineering, and there are people who know how to do it all. I am so excited to have somebody who has a brand new book out. He is an award-winning president and founder of Deck Remodelers, Sean Mcaleer. And he has a great book, beautiful book called Deck Rebellion. I love this. Revolutionary Concepts for Outdoor Living. Oh, my gosh. Thank you for coming on. What a perfect time.
Yes. Thank you, Laura. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here. And you're right. It's the weather. I'm on my deck every night out there. Last night, a little chilly, had the fire on with the heaters, but perfect. Hanging out, eating dinner, watching the news. Just couldn't wait to get back outside. This year, we had a little more of a winter than we've had in the last few. I don't know in Indiana, but in East Coast, Mid-Atlantic, the last few, we had 50-degree days in February, and this year we got slapped with reality back in the face. It's
true. But it's interesting. I have probably what is a very atypical deck for a small little bungalow, 1936 bungalow. I did have it refinished with some new types of, what is it? It's not really wood, but it looks like wood and it's fabulous. And yeah, sorry, say that again.
Composite decking.
Yes, composite decking. So I have that, but nothing really fancy. But I have friends who have put in these decks, and I wouldn't even call them that. Outdoor spaces. These are places where you almost want to live and don't want to ever leave. And you have found really the way to bring these dreams alive for so many people on turning a regular deck like what I have into, honestly, something so exclusive and beautiful. Well, how did you get started in all of this? And I know that you are founder and president of this company, but what made you so attracted to doing great decks?
So it's my passion for design, and I grew up third generation carpenter. My grandfather, my father. I grew up going into his architectural woodworking shop in New York City, and the stuff that he would build was insane. I wish that there was Instagram and all these other kind of things back then, because there was no those people weren't taking pictures of their work, but cherry libraries, custom doors, desks, all kinds of finishes for these super high-end residences in New York City. And I just loved, the problem solving and the details and just getting in there and being able to do it. And, thankfully I was there. I learned it. I learned it from a young age, literally oldest of five children. So as soon as I was old enough, my mother was sending me with him on Saturdays. All summer, I would go to the shop, and, he'd wake me up and drag me out. It wasn't hardcore when I was 5, but by the time I was 10, 11, 12, I was spending my summers sweeping the shop and then sanding shelves and banding stuff and learning to use tools, and, just got a great education early on, and really an appreciation for the design details that it takes to put together these things, because everybody thinks, oh, the architect designed it. Well, the architect kind of drew a picture that it's not like instructions from IKEA where this is part goes to here. There's a big gap between what the architect draws and what actually gets built. And it's the real craftsmen, the real people who have an eye for design and know how to put stuff together. Those are the guys that do the phenomenal work, because they just intuitively know or have learned how to do that stuff. And I got to, watch him growing up and see all the things that he did. So that was my passion for design. And early on, after college, I started building homes and gravitated towards the outside, and one thing led to another. And that became my passion. Outdoor living spaces, just absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it's interesting coming from your father's shop was in New York City.
Yeah, I was actually in Long Island City, which now is high price real estate, but back then it was all kind of warehouses and low, and we built stuff for the company that he worked for, that did all the stuff in Manhattan, which
right.
My father's from Ireland. The guys that started that company were all from Ireland. My mother's cousin ran it. It's all this whole thing. And it's a big company. They're worldwide now.
That's incredible. And it's also really, I love those stories of the family businesses and from the immigrants to New York City and Manhattan. It always fascinates me. And the Irish that came over, yes, they were some of the hardest working, most talented people. And I hope they're finally getting the beautiful recognition that they deserved all those many years ago when it was probably hard to break into anything. And a lot of hours he must have put in. But for you to be able to see that firsthand, how exciting. But it's interesting because in New York, decks, really, the only decks that are there are really on the tops of buildings, whether it's a rooftop bar or even somebody's apartment and they have a deck. But other than that, New York City, not so much. So you became attracted to doing outdoor spaces, and we grew up. I grew up in New Jersey. Yes.
So, having a backyard, and those are the kind of spaces. We don't actually work. We have done some stuff in New York proper. In the city, we did a project 17 stories up, which I could tell you that story someday, but, that was nuts. And, when you're working on a rooftop 17 stories up, getting the material up there, getting guys up there, and just, the weather conditions, when the weather's not great up there, the wind, oh my God. But typically we're not doing New York. We're doing the suburbs around New York. We're doing basically New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. So we're working outside of Philly. We're working all the way up through Greenwich, north
yes.
there, up to New Jersey, New York, and really nice properties. Because what we do, you could spend a ton of money and you could live in a box in the city. Or if you're going to spend that kind of money and you're going to move out to the suburbs, you want to be outside. You don't want to be in that box. So you might as well be in the city with 24-hour takeout. You're going to move out to the suburbs, you're buying property, you want to leverage that property, you want all the benefits of being able to be outside. people have their kids outside doing work. So when we do our spaces, we're basically designing for 10 months a year. And, no rain days because we're typically covering a section or most of the decks that we're building. We're putting heaters out there, ceiling fans. People are spending, family gatherings. It's just emotional well-being to be outside and enjoy nature. Right?
Yes. And the joy that that you're bringing to families as you put in these extraordinary spaces, because again, we're talking with someone who isn't just a deck builder. He is quite exclusive in the world of it with deck remodelers. He's the president and founder of it, Sean Mcaleer. And, but this new book, some of these pictures of the spaces that you've created, you need your own TV show. It sounds like it could be one. Deck Rebellion. I love that. Deck Rebellion, revolutionary concepts for outdoor living. And you're doing them all. Are you sort of kind of leading the charge or on the leading edge of what's new and happening and what's to come in the world of deck building and designing?
Yes. Yeah, we are actually. And that's kind of what led to this book. So there's an organization, National Deck and Railing Association, and that's New York, that's America, Canada, UK is in there now, Australia. But since 2010, they've had the National Deck Awards. So this is like the Oscars of decks, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And I won my first award in 2010. And since then, I've won 70 awards, so that makes me the most award-winning deck builder in North America since 2010. So we do stuff that really resonates. Guys from all across the country and around the world are looking at stuff that we're doing. And, for instance, we do this super cool sunken fire lounge, and we heat and curve the deck boards. The rails are all curved, and fire lounge in the middle with a round couch. And people can see all this on my Instagram, Deck Remodelers, or on my website, deckremodelers.com. But that, for instance, with that, we designed that, and that was kind of like iterations in my head over and over again. And I found a client it would be perfect for, and I showed, now we have 3D modeling and stuff, and I showed them what I wanted to do, and they thought it was awesome. I built it. That won first place in 2014, that deck. And by 2015, 16, there was 15 of them entered. And that same thing happens over and over again with the stuff that we do. We do helical curved stairs, like, the grand stairs. You walk into a house and they've got the double curved stairs coming down. Mm-hmm. And, so I did that, only I stepped it up and I did it floating. So there's nothing underneath it. These curved stairs, which also you could see on my Instagram or website, but nobody had seen it done before like that. And I'm not only doing these things like a one-off, because there's a lot of guys out there that'll do stuff one-off, and that's great. But I do it once, and then I have 20 other people that want it. So right. I'm doing stuff at scale. We do this stuff all the time. The sunken fire lounges, the curved stairs, even all the way back to the profile fascia we do on our decks with the plinth blocks and the layered profile. That really harkens back to my days in the architectural woodworking shop, right? So when I first started doing this, I didn't want to use composite, because composite, it was just so bad. And I was used to working with cherry and hickory, mahogany, all these nice, gorgeous hardwoods. And so when I started doing decks, when I started doing nice decks, I started doing them out of Ipe, which is second hardest wood on the planet, 8 times harder than oak, has a 1-hour fire rating. And I know that because of a job we did on a rooftop in the city, and we had to prove the fire rating of it. But it's more like furniture. And I put together the fascia on, instead of one big piece like a lot of people do, I put layers onto it in plinth blocks, and I transferred that into the PVC. And now that's pretty much a standard for high-end decks across the country. Really?
So it's really a cross-section of your engineering, obviously your prowess, but then you've got this, it's kind of like a Michelangelo. You can do all these things. Da Vinci, you've got the artistry in it too, which is changing the way it's being done all over the world. And I think that must be just incredible for you. What a process to what do? You get a vision in your mind of how you see this, or does does a client say, look, I'm looking for something like this, but I don't know how to explain it, and you have to come up with it? How does the process work, that artistry?
So it's kind of a combination. I'll think of something that I think is, I'll see something like I love looking at architecture. Every time I travel, my wife is like, why am I always staring at everything? Or am I not paying attention to what's going on? I'm like, well, I'm looking at that building and I'm looking at that archway and I'm looking, whether it's in Spain or it's in Thailand or it's, wherever it is, I'm looking at all these different unique spaces and the way they put things together. And I'm just processing that, and I'll see something else that'll connect in my brain. I'll say, wow, what would be really cool if we actually built a rail top bar and we custom integrated into our welded fabricated rails that we do. So you could sit at the bar and overlook the pool. That would be super cool. And then I'll be meeting with a client and they'll be like, you know what, I really would like to do this, or, whatever. And I'll say, all right, I know how we're going to do this. And I take that and I say, this is what we're going to do. And then inevitably I sell that project and I go into my team. I have architects and engineers on staff, and I go, and my production guys, and they're like, all right, so how are we building this? And I'll be like, I got it. Listen to me. This is how we're going to do this. You guys have to do all the calculations, blah, blah, blah. But this is the way we're going to do it. So having a background in building and home building, the things that I can imagine, I'm also processing, how are we building this? And everything we do has to hold up to the weather, right?
Yeah.
Everything has to be outside. Everything's going to be there. We build with steel frames. We don't build with wood frames anymore because they don't last. And decking these days has come so far that, lifetime warranty, 50-year stain and fade warranty, we're putting it on steel frames because it doesn't rot. And the new treated lumber, there's a lot of rot problems with it. So that's something, the people listening, you need to look out for that. You're investing in this high-end decking, you want to do it that way. But finding different things to solve problems, like that fire lounge. I was at somebody's house and it was just when curved couches were starting to get popular. Mm-hmm. And it was on their old rectangle deck. And I'm like, that looks terrible. That looks absolutely terrible. The round couch in the corner of a rectangle deck, we need to do better than this. And
I hope you didn't say that to them. No, I'm sure.
They did. Actually, I did. We were tearing down the deck.
Oh, okay.
I said, this is like, then they were like, yeah, you know what? That's always bothered me. And I'm like, I'm going to do something cool. And figured out how to do it, did it, designed it. Heating and bending the boards. We started that years and years ago. And, it's to the point now we have infrared ovens. But back then, we were heating with blankets. We were heating with all kinds of stuff, trying to improvise this. And nobody else was doing it. There was no YouTube videos on it. It was literally us doing it and trial and error. So, yeah, it was the Wild West. And it's a lot of things we developed. So it's cool.
I'll tell you, he goes to the Wild West in his all sorts of ideas and beautiful renovations and of decks and building them. Sean Mcaleer is my guest. He is the president and founder of Deck Remodelers. His website is deckremodelers.com. But he's got this incredible book with a lot of what we're talking about. You can see samples of Deck Rebellion, revolutionary concepts for outdoor living. And truly, so this sounds like a luxury for a lot of people. There's really maybe only a certain segment of the population that could actually really afford somebody like a Sean Mcaleer. But in a sense, though, Americans love their outdoor time and they love their yards and they love being in them. And it is an investment that I think a lot of people are probably opting to make, just knowing the increase in value for their home. Do you find that to be that this really increases the value of not only the home, but the neighborhood, probably, when you have a deck like this that's built?
For sure. And so it's even before COVID, outdoor living space was number one on Zillow's wish list for new home buyers. And the ROI on a well-constructed outdoor living space is equal to or more than kitchens and baths. So it's a surprising thing, but it's true. And one of the things, people it seems that from all the anecdotal evidence I've heard over years, because I literally during COVID, I had real estate agents calling me, texting me pictures and calling me, and they're at a home with a client asking me, can I build a beautiful outdoor space on this house? Because that's like the deciding factor, whether these people are putting a bid on this house.
Wow.
And a lot of people, the conversations with those real estate agents, and these are people from all over, they were, if it already has a beautiful outdoor space, it's a huge bidding war. So these people couldn't get what they wanted. So they're looking at a home and they want to know they can build something. And these real estate agents would reach out to me. And I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of options here. But the outdoor living space, it doesn't have to be elaborate, right? It doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be very simple. It's more like a room. You can have a room that has all the ornate moldings and all the other kind of stuff going on there, or you can have a simple room. And it really comes down to how do you furnish that space, right? Well, how do you make it feel? What materials are you using in there, right? There's a lot you can do with an existing deck to make it feel better. I mean, a louvered roof, awesome. They're absolutely awesome. Open, close it, get the sun in. The ones that we use, the Equinox does everything a roof does. It's snow load rated. Can be out there all year if you want. But that's a luxury item. You can go with an awning and get that shade and have that cover and protects you from the rain. Putting heaters on your deck, big difference, huge difference, right?
Huh?
And there's a lot of different things you can do that. Heat, fans, there's a lot of options that you can do on a budget that will make that space so much more livable.
Yes. So, I mean, in one sense, it does seem like it's extra expense, but what you're talking about is the return is just, it's so much greater. And yet it doesn't have to be, I'm sure you have all different price points. Not everybody lives in Greenwich, Connecticut,
right,
and can afford a big, beautiful, gorgeous deck that you just never want to leave. I'm assuming you can probably make any deck or any space look better and more interesting and more fabulous on many different levels. Are you able to do that? Do you have the kind of crew that can go anywhere and multiple jobs at once, or are you a little tight ship?
No, I have 6 architects and engineers on staff. I have 2 interior designers. I have multiple project managers. We do 20 to 25 jobs at a time. So,
wow.
Yeah, we do 100 plus jobs a year at scale, and we're doing the pool, we're doing the deck, we're doing the whole backyard, and we're obsessed with the design, right? So one of the things, and this is a tip for your listeners, have a master plan. You don't have to pay for everything or do everything all at once, but what you don't want to do, where I see people trip up a lot, is they do one thing this year, then they try and do something else next year and something else, and it becomes a mishmash. That's fine doing it, breaking it up and phasing it, but you start with the master plan. Design the whole thing out and then break it up into sensible pieces. And an important thing is don't leave anything half done, because God forbid you have to sell the house, move, whatever happens. You don't want to be in a position where something's half done. You also don't want to have people over to see your new deck or your new patio, and there's a hole somewhere, and everybody sits around going, what's going to be in the hole? Now you focus off of this great stuff you did. So phasing it, we help clients with that. We design the master plan. This has happened. I can't even tell you how many times I've gone to people's homes and the new pool is in, and now, because there was a big rush to get the new pool in for the kids and blah, 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 blah. And now they want to do the deck and the outdoor living space and the space they can use for 10 months as opposed to the shorter time with the pool. But for what they want to do, their ultimate dream is the pool is 5 feet too close to the house. And they're like, well, the pool guy said to put it there. I'm like, yeah, the pool guy said to put it there, but the pool guy's not thinking master plan, big picture.
Right.
Well, he said we don't have enough room for a deck. I'm like, until you measure it out, until you design it, until you look at it, you can't do that. So, people come to us before they do the pool, before they do anything, and we'll design it out and we'll then next year they put in the pool, or they put in the pool and then come back to us after it's all done and we put in the deck and everything works out perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things too is because of the model that we have, we're design build. We're not just doing a design. We're not just doing a design and here you go. Here's the design. Go get an architect to build it. Go get a builder to build it. And by the way, find out what it costs and hopefully it works out for you. And you remember that gap where I said what architects draw and what actually gets built? There's a big gap in between.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the person in the middle of that is the client writing checks to fill in that gap, right? So that's a precarious position to be in. So what we do is we start with the wants and needs of the client, and then we talk about a budget. And then we dial in the budget and we say, okay, this is what we're going to spend. This is what the budget is. And then I do the design based on that. So we're not wasting time. If you think about like contracting, I'm going to get 3 prices and I'm going to try and compare all these 3 prices. That's not an even playing field for the client. You don't know what you're getting, right? So what you want to do is you want to say, this is my budget. What are you going to give me? And then evaluate those 3 price at the same price point. It's kind of like if you're going to buy a house, you don't tell the realtor, show me houses and I'll let you know when we get to one I can afford. It doesn't work.
No.
You know what I mean? It's the same kind of thing. So what I do is I take a client's budget, I value engineer it, and I give them the biggest bang for the buck.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do.
Wow. I mean, I can only imagine to be able to have somebody like you or you working on the project, just knowing that it's going to go well, it's going to go right, it's going to be, I'm sure, within the price points that you've laid out. And the honest transparency, I think, with any type of builder is just so important. And you seem so dialed into that, into the customer's needs and the communication. And I think that's so important. So many people have nightmare stories to tell. And it makes me sad because they've laid out money and they haven't gotten what they either paid for or the contractors ended up like leaving them at halfway done. I mean, there's horror stories. So somebody like you with 70 awards in the span of a very short time and just somebody who's obviously doing it right. You've got the recipe, but I have a feeling you learned a lot of your wonderful ways of handling a customer and each job with a father like you had, going to his shop every day, seeing how he handled things. You probably got the education of a lifetime that you can't always get in school, say. You got this from watching a master like your father. And that you can't put a price on that.
Yeah. And you're right that I see, and it breaks my heart sometimes because I have people come to me and they've spent a lot of money and they basically, it's a teardown. And I ask them all these questions and it gets to the point where I feel bad because I know they're embarrassed because you know what? They didn't ask this. They didn't think to ask this. You know what I mean? It's, when we give a client a price, I know all the things that are going to come up. I'm adding that in there. I know if we're talking about budget, I'm adding in LED lights because I know you're going to want that. So you have to take that into consideration. I know you're going to want heaters. I know you're going to want fans. I know all the different things that you're going to want. So when I'm giving you the budget, I'm including that. Mm-hmm. And you can add tons of stuff on if you want. You can add more of anything you want. But I know from the beginning, because I never want to be in a position with a client where you give them the price for the deck and then they're like, okay, so they budget that much. And then they're like, well, we need lights. Okay, well, that's more. Well, we need skirting. Oh, that's more. Well, we want, that nice rail we saw on your website. Well, that's more. That's not the way to do business. I don't want to have that conversation. Wow. So I get people that come to me and I say, well, for what you want, this is the budget. And they go, oh, that's a lot of money. And I go, totally understand it. I'm including stuff that you haven't even thought about and most guys don't even know about. So take your time, do your due diligence, and almost every one of those people come back to me. And some of those people that don't come back to me will call me later and say, I ended up getting it built. And I'll be like, how'd that go? And they go, it cost me more than what you quoted me. After all the nickel and diming and adding stuff on and fixing stuff, and I thought I was getting this and I didn't get that, and it's nowhere near as nice as what you were offering. So I feel bad for people because they don't know where the landmines are. You know what I mean? They're doing something they've never done before. It's a big expense and they're walking into it blind.
Absolutely. But that's where integrity, honesty, and expertise all are married into one great company. And obviously you as the head of all of it, I honestly think you need your own TV show. Deck Rebellion is the name of the new book. And
I'll work on that.
Yeah, I really, truly think this is a show because I could watch this forever and ever. Some of the things you talk about and what the pictures that are in your book, Deck Rebellion, absolutely like things you wouldn't have even thought of. So you're a true master on every level. Sean Mcaleer, it's fun talking to people like you who really, really the best of the best. And yet just at the end of the day, a really good person, a nice person, an honest person. And that's what people need in their contractors, in their designers. And it's always worth the extra step or whatever that is to get it done right. So Deck Rebellion, Revolutionary Concepts for Outdoor Living. Gorgeous book. Get your hands on it. And also visit his website, which is deckremodelers.com.
Yep. And the book's
deckremodelers.com. And the book is available there and or wherever fine books are sold.
Yep. It's on Amazon and you can get it through our website. And if you get it through the website and you want it signed, I'll sign it personally to whoever signs up through there.
Something tells me you have a really good signature also.
I've been practicing.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. Wow, really fun stuff. Once again, Deck Rebellion is the book, Revolutionary Concepts for Outdoor Living. You don't want to pass it up. Even if you are never going to have the deck of your dreams, this is just one of those great coffee table books that you just want to always look at the pictures and just dream, and maybe one day you'll be able to hire a Sean Mcaleer with Deck Remodelers. Thank you so much. And why? What a perfect time to have this conversation with you at the beginning when it's just starting to get nice out and everyone wants to be outside. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great summer, Laura. It was so nice talking to you.
You as well. Thank you, Sean.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Way Home with Laura Smith. Here's Laura.
Well, it is a very sacred weekend or holiday or Memorial Day. That's exactly what it is. A day of, truly emphasizing the love and the memory of all of our veterans of war as they have, the ones that have either passed away from natural causes or were lost in battle in the war. And it is, to me, it's so sacred. I feel like I wish I knew more about what the day meant, but I thought it would be better to just bring on somebody who really understands what it's all about. And I have a very special author with us today. His name is Doyle Glass, and he has a book that has been sort of updated, a bestseller already. It's called Swift Sword, The True Story of the Marines of Mike 3-5 in Vietnam. 4 September 1967. Doyle, thank you so much for joining us on what is really, truly, it's not the unofficial start of summer, which is what we always say about Memorial Day. It is so much more. And thank you for being here.
Laura, it's a real honor and privilege to be here. Thank you.
So you've written this book with these firsthand accounts. You have done almost 50 interviews with soldiers, people, family members, and then soldiers themselves that were in the Vietnam War. And your book has gotten high acclaim because of its accurate portrayals of really graphic but very important moments and battles in the Vietnam War. So if you would just explain the title of the book to me, I had to ask you how to say it so that I was saying it correctly. The True Story of the Marines of Mike 3-5 in Vietnam 4 September. This is a big qualifier for Swift Sword, your book. What does that mean, the Marines of Mike?
The Marines of Mike 3-5 in the Marine Corps, there's designations of organizations. So the company has a letter designation. A is Able Company. B is Bravo. In this case, it's M Company, Mike. 35, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marine Division. So that designates a specific company and a specific battalion and a specific division in the Marine Corps.
Okay. All right. That's an eye opener, something I didn't know. So first of all, what was it that I know that you're a historian, you're an author, you're also a sculptor, and you were also an attorney general in the state of Kentucky, assistant attorney general. You just have so many hats that you've worn over the years. But authoring this book, why was it so important for you to tell this story? And Swift Sword, what exactly was that particular facet of the war in Vietnam?
I wrote my first book, Lions of Medina, was also about a company of Marines in Vietnam, and it showed more of the lead up going into boot camp and then into a battle very similar to this one day on Operation Swift. What drew me to September 4th, 1967 was one day, 2 Medal of Honors were awarded, 3 Navy Crosses, numerous Silver Stars and Bronze Stars. So what that meant to me was that there was some incredible gallantry and bravery that occurred in one specific day during the Vietnam War. Why I focused on the Vietnam War is that, we did a great job honoring our greatest generation, those who fought in World War II, but their sons fought in Vietnam. They did not get the acclaim that they deserved and now deserve. But I wanted to document what these young men went through in true combat, which I simply did not see being documented for the Vietnam War. And that's the reason that I did it.
And boy, I can't think of anything really more important. I often think of whenever I see a veteran with a Vietnam hat on, I just want to hug them and thank them. And but I can't imagine that there's a whole lot that can take away what it must have been like for a lot of them who came back. And of course, for the families of the ones who did not. But that war in particular, like you said, they didn't get the recognition. In reading certain aspects of your book, some of the scenes that you set with these interviews that you did with these vets and what they went through, I mean, we're talking, when I say graphic, I don't mean in the way that it's just gory or something. I mean, it gives you the pulse by pulse, second to second action that's going on, and often through injuries and all the tactical experiences and what they went through, and just the horror and the drama of it all. And you wonder how anybody survived any of it.
And that's true. And, you mentioned that this is a second edition. The first edition of the book, to my fault, did not include the interviews. And as time went on, I always thought something's missing from this. And almost like, you look in the mirror, it's staring me right in the face. They need to tell their story. So I went back to every interview, like you said, 50, and read through them all and put in the book, their words are in italics, so that the reader will know when a vet is speaking after the battle. And it's made all the difference in the world to really bring it to life and to have them tell their story, because they were the ones there who lived it and lived the horror. So those interviews made all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. In their words, in their memories. Did you find, were there a lot of vets that perhaps found it too difficult to talk about? You hear about that a lot, where many of them came back and they never wanted to bring it up, mention it, talk about it. It was if it didn't happen because it was just too devastating. Did you find a lot of people? I mean, you have many, many interviews, like you said, 49 of them in there from these people. So was it hard for them to recount their stories?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about the horror of combat. And there were definitely some veterans who I never spoke with, because I always obviously asked them, and it was just too difficult for them to relive. But the majority of the veterans, a number of them who have since passed away since I've interviewed them, realized that they were telling not just their story, but the story of their comrades and those who didn't come back, and those who did, and that brotherhood and that love that they have for those who fought beside them. Because when it came down to it, the men fought for each other. And that's why it was so important for them to recount this difficult story.
I can imagine. And if you could take a sort of an overarching theme that ran through most of the stories in the interviews, were there a few?
Absolutely. First off, the leadership. And I don't want to go into extreme detail, but leadership in the Vietnam War was difficult because of the way that the troops were rotated back and forth between the United States and combat. So leadership was at a premium. The commander, Lieutenant J.D. Murray, was a man who had combat experience, which was at a premium. A lot of the officers did not have combat experience during the Vietnam War. The fact that he stayed and thought he could save lives, he actually did on Operation Swift because of his leadership. The leadership of the non-commissioned officers, the sergeants, was very important. And these men had a lot that they were up against. First off, they were incredibly outnumbered by a tenacious veteran enemy. They were hampered by a rifle, the M16, which repeatedly malfunctioned, which cost a number of lives when the gun jammed. One of the Marines commented that he'd have to knock out a cartridge and fire. It was like firing muskets in the Revolutionary War. So the gallantry, the tenaciousness, the ability to overcome with so many factors stacked against these young Americans, I would say that's the number one overarching theme, in that they were not annihilated. They lived to see daylight again, and that's because of their leadership, their gallantry, their tenaciousness, and their brotherhood.
And those medals awarded, I have a very dear friend from school, Todd Robinson, who wrote the film called The Last Full Measure, and it was about Pitzenbarger, I think his name was, who got the Medal of Honor, but 32 years posthumously. And what struck me and what you're talking about now is that all of this happened, all of these very difficult circumstances that you're discussing, and yet a lot of these were, I would not say kids, but I mean, we're talking 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds. I can't even imagine, having the fortitude and the gallantry, like you said, to go there and want to take care of each other at such a young age. I mean, we know now that adults aren't even their frontal cortex isn't even fully developed until they're around 27, and hear these amazing, amazing young men coming out of their teens in these circumstances and doing these unreal things. It's just mind-boggling to me. And I'm so grateful that you had the great, desire to bring their stories forth. So this reedition of Swift Sword, your best-selling book, the true story of the Marines of Mike 3-5 in Vietnam for September 1967. Doyle Glass, you are truly, I think, doing a service to these men and women, getting their stories out. Do you plan on doing any subsequent books of this type? Do you find that there's a great appetite for people to hear the words of the people that went through these wars and fought these battles?
Absolutely. I do have plans. The problem, like we all have, is time. These interviews took a number of years and then had to be compiled and and then the whole piece of a giant puzzle had to be put together. So I do have further plans, but my main goal now is to honor our Vietnam veterans specifically, because the majority of them are now in their mid-70s. It's the time to honor them like we did our greatest generation in the 1990s. And my main goal is with these two books, Lions of Medina and Swift Sword, to tell the true story so that all of us can go out and thank our Vietnam veterans.
Oh, thank you so much. Absolutely. Doyle Glass, the author of Lions of Medina, which he just said, and Swift Sword, the re-edition of Swift Sword, the true story of the Marines of Mike 3-5 in Vietnam for September 1967, giving us a true inside story about what so many of them went through, their bravery, their courage, and their ability to love their country and one another above self. Truly remarkable. Doyle Glass, you've done them a great service yourself. They must be very happy to be a part of your book. And thank you so much for bringing it to us. I really think that this is something Americans really need to take in and incorporate into their lives, is thanking a Vietnam vet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. It's been a privilege to be here.
Thank you. Doyle Glass with the book Swift Sword. This is The Way Home on Memorial Day weekend.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Way Home with Laura Smith. Here's Laura.
Well, I am very inspired by these wonderful summer reading books, kind of taking it easy and getting lost in a great story. Well, great stories is what Jim Cleefield's all about. He goes out there and he finds good news, and I love those stories all the time. So, Jim, it is Memorial Day weekend. Do you have something a little apropos?
Oh, I think so. And I know you referenced LJ at the very beginning of the show, not only remembering those who gave their lives for this country on Memorial Day, but also specifically the veterans, and I'm glad you said that, because this story, what really resonated with me, not just about helping veterans, those who were able to come home from combat, that may have done several tours of service and try to get back into civilian life, but really what really resonated with me with this story is where they're getting the help from. And it's a subject I love to talk about on this show. Of course, our four-legged friends, those wonderful dogs, in this case, service dogs, like therapy dogs. Now, there's this national nonprofit organization that hasn't been around very long. They started 5 years ago, called United States Veteran Service Dogs. They started in 2018. And basically, and their headquarters are located in Louisiana. Unfortunately, their headquarters were ravaged by Hurricane Ida. They were trying to rebuild the facility. But the important thing is about this organization, LJ, that they are trying to help veterans come back to their home lives and do a new normal, achieve a new normal, because even for an able-bodied veteran, I mean, life is difficult enough to transition from the battlefield to home life, let alone with that. But these are veterans who are suffering, let's say, physical challenges or mental challenges. Well, these service dogs, with the help of this organization and particularly some of their local chapters, there are not very many around the country because this hasn't been around very long. But I want to focus on one in Colorado Springs, Colorado. It's called Rocky Mountain Battle Buddies. I think that's the name of the organization. And basically, this is a nonprofit that finds some service dogs to match up with these veterans who are suffering from, as I said, mental challenges and physical challenges coming back from their time in service to help them ease back in. And particularly with this one is that they train these dogs. It's 12 and 18-month process. They find these pet raisers and pet sitters. Usually the pet sitters are like of high school age. They take them into their care, and they don't just teach them the basic 7 commands like they would for typical dog training. They want to train these dogs in a way that they can help these veterans, specifically so they can match them up correctly with these veterans based on what their needs are. For example, if one veteran is suffering from PTSD and anxiety, I'll give an example, then the dog would basically be trained to distract that veteran in some way. Or if there's a veteran who is suffering a physical challenge, could be an amputee, could be in a wheelchair or using a walker, well, that dog can be an extra pair of hands, if you will, let's say to fetch something or retrieve something, maybe open a door. And Tina Young, who's a volunteer with the Rocky Mountain chapter of United States Veteran Service Dogs, she said, we have these dogs in their care with these trainers, and it's tough to give them up because they have a bond with them, too. They spend so much time with them, making sure that they're well trained. But we give these dogs for free, and that's the best part of this. There's no cost at all to these veterans whatsoever. And he said, but they're worth their weight in gold because they're more than just companionship with these veterans need, because they're alone. They don't have somebody else. It's just more than just a real companion to have. They're way more than that. An extra pair of hands, as I said. And it's amazing. I thought this organization was around much longer than that, the national organization. So what you can do is if you want to learn more about maybe perhaps learning more about this program, becoming a pet raiser or sitter, you just go to the website. USVeteranServiceDogs.org is the name of the website. And this is a wonderful way of giving back. And what a better way to do that than with these service dogs?
I think it's a great idea and a great cause for sure. On this Memorial Day, do you have any plans, Bob and Jim, for for honoring our veterans or our, the people that have passed away in the wars, or just in your heart with your prayers?
Well, I guess in my case, if I may, my dad, who I lost last year, he served in the Navy. He was a proud Navy veteran. He served between Korea and Vietnam in the late 50s on an aircraft carrier, and I believe that's where he got his flying skills. He went on to be a great private pilot. He never flew commercially. So I guess in remembering Memorial Day, I guess it was with my dad in mind because, what he did. I mean, because he served this country very well. I mean, he didn't have to be killed or kill, but he served very honorably. So I would say really in Memorial Day commemorating, it's really about my dad mostly. Okay,
that's that. And me too. My dad, who passed away in December, he was in the Air Force, and he served, I think like 4 years or something like that. But it meant a lot to him. It truly meant a lot to him. And, once someone enlists for something like that, I think it changes them forever. And it is something that when they do pass on, it is something that means more to them. Just so much to them. Yeah.
Our
How about you,
Poppy.
Bob? Yeah. Did anyone in your family serve?
Yes, my nephew was a Marine and one tour of duty over in Iraq. And I'm going to be spending the weekend at his house, seeing his newest daughter for the first time, Lila Louise.
Lila Louise?
Yes.
Oh, how wonderful. Yes. So you get to be with him. He was a Marine, and now he's bringing new life. Oh, I love it. Lila Louise. Mm-hmm. How gorgeous is that? Well, that sounds beautiful, and I hope that everybody has a wonderful weekend commemorating Memorial Day, and those that you love as well, and that you have a great week. We will see you next time on the way home. God bless. I'm Laura Smith.
Podcasts by Federated Media.